Welcome to the Dolan Cadell podcast, guys. Today we have a special guest. This is going to be a really, really fun interview for me, at least personally, because if you've noticed and you've been following the podcast, we've had kind of a mixture of people from Christian background, Muslim, you name it, right? Trying to really hit on the different levels of backgrounds and experiences and things that are connected to Israel and the subject matter of current war that's happening in Gaza. Unfortunately, that's still ongoing. And so, if you're watching this podcast years in the future, and we're done and finished with this whole conflict, that would be great. But that is part of what is motivating and ongoing in the subject matters that has been brought up. And my guest today is a former Navy SEAL who has served in combat to fight ISIS. He's I guess you could say, a younger SEAL from the SEAL community. So as far as his war experience isn't necessarily like from the 20-year war or what have you. But
right.
his experience has been fighting ISIS. And why is that important? Why is that significant to this current events that were happening right now? Is because this is who we've been facing in Gaza. And so that is why I think this is going to be a really fun interview, meaning we're going to be able to bring in some really good insights and where it crosses over with what I've been facing on the battlefield and also what Justin had faced during his time in the Navy SEAL teams. He is also an incredible artist, very talented.
Thanks, man.
We're going to talk about this a little bit too in my background and how that relates, because that is a soft spot for me. Is the world of arts, and if you have been paying attention, this is what I'm wearing on my plate carrier. So
Awesome.
right there in the backdrop there, right, boom, it's on there. And so I have it both on the front and on the back. I have both the multi-cam black, which is my favorite, by the way. Doesn't really
Sweet.
go with my military outfit, but
Yeah.
we also have the Ranger green version. And we're going to talk about these patches, what they mean, and that is just part of the little bit of what Justin has in his arsenal of artistic designs.
Mm.
You look at his paintings. You have one in the backdrop behind you right
Oh
now,
yeah.
life size painting
Dang, dude. I got a
of one
couple
of
of
your
them.
artworks. Yeah, exactly, on the
That's
walls there
huge.
too.
Yeah.
So, any case, so Justin, before I bore the poor people to tears here with that very long
Oh, you're
introduction,
kind, man. Very nice of you.
brother, please, tell the people a little bit about yourself. You can start wherever you want. I'm not gonna, we're not gonna
Yeah.
do maybe a deep dive, because here's a
Yeah.
fun thing too. We can refer you to the Shawn Ryan show interview, which I didn't know you were on,
Like,
by the way.
yeah,
I
it's
didn't
like
know
the
you.
3 hour version.
That's the
I'll
three
give you
hour
like
version.
I'll give you like the 2 minute. How about that?
Yeah,
I'll do
yeah.
like 2 minutes.
So I highly recommend folks you go check it out. I think you're
Thanks.
interview number 20 or something like that, give or take.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yep.
And what's your deal with
Search around the
10
20s.
with multiplication of tens? Because you're the 10th interviewee on my
Am I?
podcast.
Dude,
Yes.
let's go.
So
Awesome.
this
I'm
is
about it.
podcast number 10, and you know, but you want to give us a skinny about yourself, brother? You can go
Yeah,
wherever you
man.
want.
Well, first, thanks for having me on the show, man. It's a real honor, and it's great
Yes,
to
sir.
finally talk to you in person. We've been messaging for a bit on social media, but it's really good to see you and chat with you.
Yes, sir.
A little bit about me. My name is Justin Hughes, like you said, and I was raised in Southeast Asia. I came from a missionary family, Christian missionaries, and spent most of my life in Southeast Asia. Came back to the States for college. Did the ROTC thing for a little bit in college, decided higher education really wasn't for me. Ended up joining the Navy with a SEAL contract.
Hmm.
Went through BUDS, became a SEAL, served on SEAL Team 5, did 2 deployments, one fighting ISIS in the Battle of Mosul in 16 and 17, and then spent some time as a BUDS instructor teaching students how to
Oh, wow.
dive. And then,
Okay.
did like 2.5 years, maybe 3 years as a BUDS instructor.
So you were the guys that
And
everybody
then,
loved. One of those.
Yeah, I was very popular among students. They love seeing the blue and gold with the blue shirts coming down the beach. They
Yeah.
loved it. But yeah, I spent some time as a buds instructor.
Cool.
Started having a family in the SEAL teams, and just realized what I was missing out at home, and decided
Mm.
to kind of shift my career a little bit. And
Yeah.
God works wild ways, and found myself painting full time here in 2020 when I got out, and been doing that ever since.
So you served in what years?
2011, and then got out 2020.
2011,
So
2020. So,
yep,
okay,
so like
gotcha.
9 years. And then I did 3 in the reserves, but that was during COVID, so not a lot happening there.
Do you guys walk around with masks all day long?
Dude, they tried to get me to.
Gotcha. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So COVID for us here in Israel was actually really brutal.
Yeah,
Not
I remember hearing that.
not one of the best moments in the Israeli history. Modern
Yeah,
Israel history. In fact, to me, that was one of the. I've never talked about this publicly, actually,
yeah.
but I personally got discriminated against because I was not one of those who took the vaccine. I
Hear you,
chose
man.
the route of personal fitness and health and vitamins and
Hmm.
immune boosters because I handled COVID. My family did, and just like we've done for years.
Yep,
The colds, the flus, the everything that came through, knew this, knew that. That's how we've handled it always. But as many people know now, the COVID regulations turned out to be a bunch of kangaroo nonsense, and now it's come public that
yep.
it was just a bunch of
All along,
manipulation and whatever. And again, I didn't want to be a conspirator at the time because that's what you sounded like if you ever said anything about it. But
for
just
sure.
something felt weird, and I was just like, well, I'm just going to do what I think is good for me and my family, and I never debated people on it. People kept debating me on it, because
Yeah,
because we ended up in scenarios where it became an issue,
yep,
like the tour guiding course. So my background, I've done executive protection for many years since I got out,
yep.
and have wanted to do the tour guiding course because I really love history and connect with
Mm,
a lot of Christians around the world with the work that I do with my nonprofit. And so I chose to finally do this course during COVID. So COVID for me was great in that sense. I was able to add
right.
another thing to my life. But during the course, it became kind of an issue of, those who were on the bus of the vaccinated, non-vaccinated, and the majority, of course, were vaccinated. And
Yep,
that's why I say it was like kind of a sore deal for me because I kind of got
dude.
blackballed, and I was just like, listen, I don't get into people's personal business when it comes to health or
Yeah.
whatever. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching from afar, just seeing what was going on in Israel with y'all's vaccine mandates and stuff, and just lamenting for you guys because we had our
yeah,
own thing. I had to
yeah.
muster early and in person, while everybody else got to be at home for some reason, and
Hmm.
just I'm sure you had all the social pressures and everything to get
Yeah.
it, and I was the same. I was in the same boat, man. I'm like, I'm not doing it, and even some of my family was like, you got to do it. You're gonna lose your benefits and all this and that. And I'm like, I joined knowing that I could die for my country,
Right.
and I'm more than willing to lose a retirement or whatever
Yeah.
and get kicked out of the military for my belief. Like, this is
Yeah.
a no brainer for me. I'm happy to lose this career. You know what I
Wow.
mean? If it means me standing up for what I believe in, and if
Yeah.
anything, my sons and daughters will be able to look at that as a point in my life where career's not everything,
Yeah.
retirement's not everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And dad
Let it
stood up
burn.
for what was true to him. Right.
That's
I
right,
mean,
man. Yeah, and it
that's
might
a
not
big
be the
deal.
popular decision. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, man. So good for
Yeah.
you. I'm stoked. And this podcast is already canceled now. So we've talked
Well,
about
tough
that.
for yeah.
This is immediately getting shut down. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just
Yeah.
funny too, because like I said, I've never come public on it. In fact, I was one of
Yeah.
the first ones too, actually, to be very open about posting pictures of myself, my family, my kids, whatever, with masks, and
Yep.
encouraging people and be like, hey, let's quickly just get this over with, and do the protection, do what you need to do, and
Totally.
let's get over with.
Yeah.
Because part of my service was actually in the uh, I was in the founding of what's called the Palchats, which is the Home Front
Hmm.
Command search and rescue units. And
Okay.
what this unit does is it goes into natural disasters. I can't speak. So
Okay.
natural disasters, earthquakes, whatever, and then basically they go in and they get people out of the wreckages. So like
Okay.
Haiti and
Yep.
events like that. But also
Hmm.
part of the training is chemical warfare, and so we do the whole hazmat suit training,
Interesting.
you
Yeah.
know. And so
Interesting.
basically I was taking concepts from, like how do you fight
What you're
chemical
already learning.
warfare,
Sure.
gloves, this, don't touch your eyes, don't touch your mouth, basic, like common sense stuff,
Yep.
right? So that's why I laughed, because I was like,
Brilliant.
at first I was just like, hey guys, let's, use some common sense, and let's just get over with.
Sure.
And then after a while I was just like, okay, this is all right, now this is becoming
Yeah.
nonsensical.
The veil gets lifted a little
Yeah.
bit, and you
And I was just like,
start
well,
asking some questions.
yeah. And I was just like, well, I'm not going to get into this thing because I can tell where it's going. It becomes
Yeah,
divisive, and I just don't want to,
for sure.
frustrate any of my friends and relationships
Yeah.
over something. Because families got
Make
really
yeah.
hit hard because of that. I've noticed, as far
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
division. And to me, that
Yep.
was like, okay, you
Yeah.
know.
You got to make the decision for you and your family, and then just let everybody else be, man. But hold your ground, defend
So,
your
so,
castle.
so yeah, defend your castle. And so, cool, man. Like, so we just start off really good on this podcast. Got a lot of people excited on that.
Yeah.
But
Comment section's gonna go crazy.
yeah, but so you were also, I guess you could say, not really your typical Navy SEAL, as far as I understand from just reading,
Mm.
about different people's stories. Like, in other words, you didn't like grow up in the United States, right? You
Right.
ended up in, growing up in a,
Mm.
you know in a
Yeah.
completely
Yeah. Foreign
different
country.
backdrop, and then
Yeah.
came back.
Yeah.
So can you talk about that a little bit? I
Definitely.
mean, because that's
Yeah.
not your normal SEAL
I
story, I
don't look.
think, in a way.
Yeah. I don't look like well, I guess I look like an American, obviously, but
Yeah,
I definitely didn't feel like one coming to the country
yeah,
as a college student. I was very proud to be an American. I knew what that meant in foreign countries. I knew what it meant to walk around the streets of a foreign country and have a passport
yeah,
that says United States on it. I knew that that held weight, right? And
yeah.
there's an interesting story with Luke Summers, who was an American hostage in Yemen, and he got captured with a bunch of other foreign people from other foreign countries. I think like Australia, Great Britain, and stuff. And they were in a room together at one point. And they were going around the room talking about where everybody was from. They were trying to figure out where everybody was from. And Luke Summers, he said, I'm an American. And there was a great relief in the room. Like, thank God there's an American with us, because
Oh,
they
wow.
knew that we were going to come for them. They knew
Wow.
that he wasn't going to be left behind. So I knew that there was weight in being an American.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that being said, moving to the States, I lived here like my freshman year in high school. We moved back for a time, but then back overseas. So I didn't have a lot of experience in the United States, but I did love this country, and
Hmm.
I knew the value of fighting for it.
Yeah,
But coming in, I felt kind of like an immigrant, man. I moved to the States. There's a lot of culture shock for me.
yeah.
I didn't really understand the social dynamic in a lot of aspects. So,
Right.
uh, but I just wanted to serve our country, and I knew, and I loved it, and
Yeah.
so I had to be a part of our military.
Was there like a like fashion or music, or anything like that that was like way different, and you were like that weird kid that was like, wait, you listen to
Oh,
what? Or you know, or
yeah,
what kind
maybe.
of clothes is that? Like, what are those shoes, man? Like, that's
Dude.
so outdated, or right? I mean, like,
Oh
was
man,
there
I
any of
was
that
way
kind of
behind
stuff?
on the fashion game, man.
Yeah.
Like I said, I grew up in Southeast Asia, and I got like village clothing. There's like, I don't know. I feel like my parents were really
Yeah.
good in that anytime we'd come back to the States, they're like, we're gonna go down and go shopping for you guys real quick, so you guys aren't gonna totally embarrass yourself. So they helped us to fit in a little bit. They understood, like,
Hmm.
you're going to go to public school, and you're going to deal with some stuff. But I'd
Yeah.
say the biggest thing was just like how sheltered I was, just
Okay.
not understanding the slang, the lingo, the social dynamic of big groups. I didn't
Yeah.
understand like the popular. I didn't understand what it meant to really be, the popular kids, or
Right.
uh,
The
the
clicks.
goth kids, and like there's like all the cliques and stuff
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
into school, and that was really hard to navigate for me. So I just wanted to be everybody's friend, and that wasn't necessarily the case for everybody that wanted to get to know me. I was kind of, I guess, a weird kid, in that I grew up in the mountains.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Village kid,
yeah,
right?
and then moving, and yeah, man, and I moved to like Alabama, like a little
Hmm.
town in Alabama. So
Yeah.
very different culture, very different.
Yeah. Well,
But yeah,
yeah. Alabama is like a foreign country, and I did my college in Pensacola, Florida, right?
that's right. Yeah,
And so it has a lot of that Alabama spillover as far as
uh
accent
huh,
and
for sure. Yep, the culture's pretty similar.
and
A
man,
little bit behind.
yeah. And one of the most embarrassing moments I had is I went to a gas station to fill up my gas, in the car, and I went to pay, and the guy behind the counter, he's an African American, right, like a dark guy,
Yeah,
and he started to like, can I blah 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 whatever, sir, and I looked at him
yeah.
and I went, huh? It's like he spoke with such a thick accent, right? Had
You
no
had no
clue what he
idea what
was
he was
saying.
saying.
And after maybe the third or so time of going, Excuse me, what?" I finally just put the money down. I said, "Sure, yeah, whatever." Like, I was like, I probably look like this total
Dude,
racist jerk.
like
I
I don't.
understood enough, what I mean, of the culture to realize
Yeah,
this isn't looking well. White dude
dude.
asking, a black guy to, I'm sorry, I can't understand you, son, kind of like whatever.
Yeah,
I'm like, this does
yep,
not look good, man. And so I was so embarrassed
dude.
because I had no clue what he was saying to me, and
It's
that
hard,
to me
man.
was a culture shock. So I know the feeling, because
Yeah,
with my English and whatever, we talked about this before that we started the podcast here.
right.
I grew up here in Israel as a to
That's
American
right.
parents, so just because I could speak English, I you know I didn't understand America, right?
Right.
So I had
Dude,
a
I
lot of
mean,
that
I
culture
remember going
shock.
to a baseball game. I remember going to a baseball game in high school, and
Yeah.
like they're selling, popcorn or something, and the guy's asking for money, and I pull out money from and I don't know what it is. I'm handing him quarters and stuff, and I'm like, dude, I don't remember what these mean,
Oh
and I'm like,
yeah,
just
yeah.
take
What
what
is
you
it
need.
worth? Yeah,
Yeah, like I don't know what the shiny ones are. Like they're all
yeah, yeah,
silver to
yeah.
me. I don't know.
Dude,
But I
that's
remember like,
hilarious.
and people just, what is wrong with this
Yeah,
dude?
yeah,
But
yeah.
like,
What's up with that
so
guy?
you can come across as like, this guy's a freaking dummy.
Yeah,
I don't,
yeah. So
but
no,
yeah,
I can relate
definitely.
to that. I
That's
can
it,
relate
man.
to that.
That's hard. That's challenging.
That sucks.
Yeah. When did you move to the States? What?
This was back in 2000. So March of
Oh, wow.
2000, I got
Yeah.
married, moved, and then
Okay.
of course there was
Yeah. So you're old. That's,
yeah, I'm a little older than you. I think
yeah. Yeah. I mean, but, well, yeah,
I'm
probably you got
43.
a couple
I'm
years on me.
43.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm 35. So you got to be a couple years on me.
yeah, a little bit more gray, and
That's right. I'm getting there, man. I'm getting there.
yeah. So cool.
But
So
that's,
yeah, I mean, so think about this. Like when I served, right? I served late.
yep.
I recruited in 2003, and what I remember from like what was happening in the world, as far as mainly I'm looking at the United States because I have family
Yep.
and so on from there. I remember the Iraq thing was blowing up. I remember the contractors that were strung up and burned alive. Right.
Yeah.
One of them
Yep.
was a Navy SEAL.
Was a former SEAL. Yep.
Total hardcore dude, like
Yeah.
legend. I forget his
Just a
name right
stud.
now,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I am too right now. I don't
yeah,
know.
but I know he
Yeah.
was
We
on.
know what we're talking about though.
Yeah, I know
Yep.
he's on one of those TV shows like where they competed, and he was real cocky. But I remember hearing from stories from other people that knew him,
Other operators. Yeah.
yeah, that he was like just like a total like machine and dedicated and helped other SEALs get into the teams.
Hmm.
So you had like people like that, right? That became news, and I remember how that just like it cut you guys to the heart, and we're like,
Right.
dude, this isn't right. I'm in Israel feeling the same thing, right? and then Israel was
Yeah.
actually under chemical warfare attack from Saddam Hussein. This
Saddam.
right.
Yep.
So like I don't know, a lot of
Yep.
people are thinking like, wait, what? Yeah, 2003, that scumbag was still alive and still threatening us.
Yeah.
So my recruitment started with me carrying a gas mask with me everywhere I went. Right.
Mm.
Just give people a little bit of context. And
Yeah.
so yeah, so it's different. It's different times, right? And then you kind of
Yep.
came, you came into the teams
I came in late.
after
Yeah.
the
I
the
came in late.
Iraq and all that wave of all the cool guy stuff, so to
Yeah.
speak, right? The Twin
Dude. Yeah. You
Towers,
feel
or
like you miss it
yeah, yeah. But I did see the Twin Towers go down in while in
when you
Florida,
were
where I
in the
was in
States.
school, and
Yeah.
yeah, and I remember that right there is what motivated me to just get back home, because what people don't realize, at the same time, Israel was in the heat of the second Intifada. A lot of my friends were affected by terrorist attacks, bombings of buses, discotheques, you name it. And I
Hmm.
was like, dude, I just couldn't stand it anymore. I was like, I'm here in America, and I used to do sodding for the special forces neighborhoods in Florida. I'm not sure if I can say where that is, but in any case, it's in
Yeah.
that area there.
Yeah.
And I remember just feeling like a total loser. You know, I'm
Just
like
like,
sodding
what
the
am I
lawn.
doing here?
Yeah, of dudes that are deployed, doing actual
Yeah.
things. And it's like,
I
that
know.
was hard for me, and so,
For sure. Yeah, it's like you're chomping at the bit to do something that
yeah,
is has real value and weight to it. And yeah, I hear you. I mean, I was a young kid. I actually remember 9/11,
yeah,
and it's wild to me just kind of thinking about this as like our motivation. It's so many people who have fought in our military. It's their motivation. And I was an instructor at Buds, like I said earlier, and
yeah,
there's kids going through there that weren't even born, and they're going to fight in a conflict
yeah.
that they weren't
Wow.
even born when it happened, man.
I know, right?
And so it's pretty wild to think about, like, where's your heart? And
Yeah. What
yeah, it's tough.
motivated you? What was the thing that motivated you, and why the SEAL teams in specific?
Well, I think like I said earlier, I had a deep appreciation for being an American, and I valued being an American,
Yeah.
and I wanted to be a part of that force that could go out and save somebody in a foreign country, um, because there was value to that life. As I matured and grew, especially as a believer in Christ, you realize, like, hey, man, everybody has that value. That's not something that's uniquely American. It's wonderful that America recognizes it, right? It
Hmm.
should be something that every nation pursues and tries to do. It's a wonderful standard. Uh,
Yeah.
that being said, I wanted to be a part of a group of men that really wanted to go out and do battle against our nation's enemies, that wanted to stop, that wanted justice. And so I joined the ROTC program at my college, and
Yeah.
they're going around the room asking everybody, like, hey, why did you join? Why are you here? Why are you here? And a lot of it's the answers I heard were, oh, the college education is great, or this is going to be a great springboard for my future career, or
Yeah.
I just needed some job experience. And I'm looking around the room, I'm saying, where are the people like me? Like, where are the people who just want to fight bad guys and rescue good guys? You know,
Yeah. Yeah. What
and
is
and I
ROTC, by
and
the
I
way? Not everybody knows what that is.
it's a college program for college students going through, and once you complete the certain amount of courses through college, you commission directly as an officer in whatever branch. So mine was an Army program, and they have Navy, they have Marine Corps, but I was just going through an Army program at the time.
Hmm.
And so as soon as you finish college, you essentially graduate and you go straight into the military as an officer.
Okay.
And so I realized I didn't really want to be a part of that group. And the job selection going out of that is kind of like you could get thrown anywhere, the Army needs you. And so I
Yeah.
could have ended up a supply officer or something, and that wasn't happening for me. So I started like researching, the
Yeah.
hardest programs in the military, because I thought, hey, whatever's the hardest, whatever weeds out the most people, those people really must want to be there for that job. Those
Yeah.
people really want to serve. And I was looking at Army Special Forces and the SEALs, and to me, the SEAL teams took the cake on the hardest training. So I ended up joining the Navy, and the rest is kind of the history. But dude, I felt like I didn't really have any other options. That's just what I had to do. That was the
Hmm.
calling that God put in my heart, and I didn't really see any other career choices for myself. So I had nothing
Yeah.
else. Even if I quit SEAL training, I didn't know what else I'd do. I didn't want to just be in the Navy. I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. So
Hmm. And I
that
understand
was
your
it for
brother
me.
played a part in that too.
Yeah, man. My brother and I joined at the same time. Yeah, so we joined. We went through boot camp together. We were in the same division, and dude, the instructors when they found out we were brothers, they were like, mind blown. How did this happen? This isn't supposed to happen. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's
because it's not
normal.
supposed to happen normally,
Yeah, I
typically.
don't think it's supposed to. I don't think it typically happens where
Okay,
brothers ship out and go through boot camp together. But my brother and I were in boot camp together, and we went through buds together. We were in
dude.
the same buds class, and he quit the first week. He was one of those guys where the SEAL teams was something that he thought would. He always wanted to kind of be in the intelligence world,
Okay.
and I don't think he ever planned on making the SEAL teams a career.
Hmm.
But he knew that that experience would be beneficial for his future.
Yeah.
And I think as he got into the training and started doing the work, putting in the work, he realized there's other ways I can get this. I can get some experience to go into the intelligence community, and it
Yeah.
wasn't for him, so he ended up quitting. But he ended up doing something else, and
Did he
yeah,
continue in the military though? Like
yeah, he
as a
he's
career?
actually, strangely enough, man, like he's an Army chaplain now. So
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, the Lord just kind of completely changed his heart. He quit buds, went into he was an IT for a while in the Navy, finished out his contract with the Navy, went to seminary, and took up a commission as an officer. And now he's serving as an Army chaplain. So
Still
he's still in doing his thing, man.
cool.
Yep,
Cool.
yep. And
Cool.
my father just retired as an Army chaplain as well. So
Oh wow.
I'm the black sheep now.
Very cool. Very cool, man. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
man.
I imagine, because I know some of the hard stuff that I've been through
Mhm.
during my military service, and just like the mind games that they play with you, in combat units, right?
Yeah,
Lot of embracing the suck and
totally, man.
cold nights and
Yeah,
hot days or whatever it may be.
yeah,
Um, that must have been like when I'm thinking about it on a morale level, that must have been pretty hard for you to kind of press on and be like, you know what, I'm going to keep doing this, right?
yeah. It
Because
was, man.
you
It
know,
was for
and
sure.
for
It
me
was
that
like
takes a
I
lot of
lost my
respect.
brother.
Yeah,
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate
you
that.
know,
Yeah, I lost. The whole thing. I give credit to dudes that just join and do their own. They're all by themselves. They're making friends and kind of growing
right,
up in that community. I had kind of a lifeline right next to me. If anything went wrong
exactly.
at the end of the day, I had my brother to talk to, and he knew me. I knew him. We knew
Yeah,
where we were at emotionally, mentally, everything. And so he was always like a safe space. And
yeah,
so, as weird as that is, as
yeah.
snowflakey, I hate
No,
saying safe space, but he was a genuine safe space. And
right, right. Like he's not going to
yeah,
critique you
and
and make
so
fun of you for
for
bringing
sure,
up
dude, he
things that
knows
you're having a
exact.
hard time
Yeah,
about.
like,
Yeah,
dude, that sucked, man. I don't know, my shoulders like really bad, or my calf, is destroyed
yeah,
right now.
right.
Whatever,
Yeah,
whatever our moaning and groaning was. But
yeah,
yeah, dude, when he quit, man, it was really challenging for me. That was the only time in the whole program that I thought about quitting, and that's the first time the brotherhood of the community really came around me and put their arms around me and said, "Dude, we're your bros now." And they took me in. They were like, "Let's do one more evolution together." And I said, "All right, I'll do one more." And then, all right, I'll go into the night evolution. All right, I'll do one more. I'll do one more. I'll do one more.
yeah,
And the next thing, it's a week later, and Hell Week's next week, and I'm like, I'm just going to do one more. And that's when you get that mentality. It's just like, I'm just going to one more day, one more day, one more day, and you just kind of take it in little bite-sized chunks, man, and it changes everything. Just going at it slow. But yeah, the training's no joke, man. It's a hard pipeline.
oh yeah.
But
So would you say that's your advice for anyone who wants to pursue the Navy SEAL route,
yeah,
is just,
yeah.
take it day by day,
Of course,
small,
yeah. And
yeah,
sometimes push up by push up.
push up.
It's not always. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sometimes you have to really break it down, man. Just one
yeah,
more push up. One more push up. And it's tough, but it's a joy to endure, man. It's really coming through the other side is incredible experience. But you can't look down the road. You can't think about what's going to happen next or what the instructors are going to do to mess with you next. You just got to think about what you're doing in that moment, do it to the best of your ability, and then move on. And then at the end of the day, reflect and just be grateful for the experience. As a buds
Yeah.
instructor, I used to talk to my students before we'd go into really hard evolutions, and I'd say, "Look, guys, you know, this is one of the few opportunities in your life where you're going to be able to be pushed to your absolute limit. Like literally, you could die if it goes wrong, you know. But you have people looking out for you. You have a medical staff that cares about you. You have instructor staff that cares about you, that want to see you come through this. And you know, we may not act it.
Yeah.
We want to push you to your absolute limit. But this is one of the only places where you can go to your almost death and have people looking out for you.
Hmm.
And revel in that. Push yourself to your absolute limit, man. And if you die, you die. But push yourself, you know. And we'll try to do our best to not let you die, obviously, you know. But that's almost the mentality you have to have,
Yeah.
man. Like I remember going on a run and my Achilles tendon, man, it was just blown up. And I was chasing this instructor and I was like, you know what, dude, I'm so over this. Like I'm not gonna quit, but I hope my Achilles tendon ruptures and it just takes me out, you know, so I
Yeah.
don't have to do this anymore, you know. And I'm like, I'm gonna run faster now so that my Achilles tendon explodes.
And the
And
guy you were
that's kind of it.
chasing, it was like a total weak, limp
Yeah, dude, it
seal.
was
Yeah.
freaking
Right.
Eddie Gallagher. That's who it
Yeah.
was. It was Eddie
Yeah.
Gallagher
Yeah.
blasting ahead of me.
Dude, that guy
And
is so
dude,
hardcore, man.
he's a beast, dude. The dude's a
Right.
stud.
Yeah.
And I remember chasing him and just hoping that my Achilles tendon would explode so I wouldn't have to chase after him anymore. But the dude's fast, man. But it didn't explode, and I you know performed. So here
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I had a platoon commander who was like the equivalent to Eddie as
Okay,
far as just being a total badass. And I remember you just did not want to let him down, right?
right.
And we were doing these really long hikes with all our gear. Is kind of like the pipeline training that we do
Hmm.
for our you know, till you become a combat soldier. and
Yep.
and and then you get your beret after you do the final hike, which at our time was over 90 kilometers.
Dude,
And
that's
if yeah,
a
and
beast.
and then if you're in the special forces route, you do 120 kilometers as the final hike.
Dang, son. What's your
Yeah.
weight? What's your weight and stuff look like on that? What are you carrying around?
What you're seeing back here, you're carrying the
Okay,
full
yeah,
gear.
your
Yeah.
kit, your full kit.
And
Okay,
if you're a machine gunist, you carry the machine gun with all the ammo. If you're, etc.
yeah, do it.
And so, yeah. But today I think they halved all of that, all the what I just told you. Like the soldiers today, it's half of all of that
Interesting.
because of
Why did they change
injuries.
that?
Because of
Oh,
injuries,
injuries.
like
Yeah.
yeah, that the stress fracture, stress
Yep.
whatever
Yep.
on your body. But yeah, so there was this one guy. His name, I won't say his name. I don't want to
Yep.
disrespect the poor dude, but there was a guy in my unit. He was the fattest guy. This guy was like 100 kilos. I don't know what that is in pounds, but
It's large man.
he's a big dude.
Yeah.
And for Israelis, right? Because again,
Yeah.
we're much smaller soldiers than like U.S. military standard. And so this guy's the fattest guy, and he's legit a fat dude. And it sucked
Yeah.
because you know what I mean. Like, can you
He's
imagine being a fat dude going through
carrying
combat
extra weight.
training? You know, and
No, no, I can't.
was it like
Can't.
David Goggins? I think is one of the few guys I would
Right.
imagine
Goggins.
knows that
Right.
experience.
Yeah.
So he's like a
Right.
David Goggins, actually. Like, he was an overweight dude,
Big boy. Yeah.
and he just like bitching through the whole thing, right? Hike
He's
and
complaining.
like whining,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I can't do this, I can't do this. And so it was me and a few other guys that we went to the back, and we're like, no man, you're gonna make it through this. And so we just motivated and pushed them through, and I dragged his butt through every freaking hike, dude. I was not
That's
giving up
nice
on
of you,
him.
man. That's nice of
Yeah.
you.
So
You're a good teammate.
so my platoon commander, right? He finally came and he's like, "What the heck's going on here?" He's like, he was a little dude, like a little dude, and he looks down. He's like, "What are you?" He's like, "Oh yeah," and he's just like hardcore dude. He just grabbed him, threw him on his back. He's like, let's do this, and like walked with him. I'm like, holy crap. And so then he went as far as he could do and has dumped his big fat butt on the ground. And he's like, all right,
Dude,
just if you can't walk it, we're gonna carry your butt. And that's what we did, man. And I remember like he led by example, and it's like that's what I mean. Like I did not want to fail this dude, and
right.
he actually became the only casualty of our deployment when we went into Gaza
Oh
from
man.
my platoon. Besides this year,
Wow.
one of our medics got killed in the Gaza war currently.
Man.
So yeah. In any
I'm
case,
sorry to
so
hear that. It's,
no, you know how it is.
yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what I'm saying, like, so would you say like people like Eddie, and were there other guys like that in your
Yeah, man.
deployment and in your trying to become a SEAL that you looked at and you
Oh,
just felt like there's no way on God's green earth I'm going to fail this guy?
yeah. There's the staff is full of them, man. Like I joined
Yeah.
in 2011, like I said. So a lot of those dudes had been around the block. They had multiple deployments. They had their stories, and they carried the weight with them, even back home. And so they were trying to navigate their own family life and what they were going through. And as a student, uh, it was a blessing for some of them to open up about their experience, and hear some of their stories and see the weight of it. You'd have instructors breaking down in front of a class, and that reality of what war does to a man, even one that you look up to, that's an incredible performer.
Yeah.
It carries weight. It's very meaningful. It stresses the an aspect of the nature of war that a lot of people don't see, and it helps. I think got young guys prepare themselves a little bit for kind of what they're getting themselves into, and in some cases maybe turn some dudes off. Maybe this combat thing really isn't for me. Maybe I don't
Yeah.
really want to be here, and
Yeah.
so it can have an opposite effect as well.
Hmm.
It can motivate young men to say, this, I don't want to let this guy down. This guy's done a lot for our country. This guy's doing a
Hmm.
lot being here, explaining to me, what he's been through. And so I'm going to perform for this dude. I want to be the best SEAL that I can be for him.
Hmm.
And then you have the other guys like, dude, I can't meet the standard. It's an impossible standard. And maybe I don't want to let him down, and I'm not going to even try, so it could go both ways probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, for sure. Pipeline's full of them, man. There's always good ones. And, there's always ones that maybe aren't so great. And I think the
Yeah.
students have a pretty good way of kind of identifying those,
Yeah.
because no matter what community you're part of, a guy that started out great could be not so good of an operator, and then dudes that were awesome, could turn it up for a while. We're human, we go through
Exactly.
ebb and flows. You're gonna make mistakes. You could be a great operator and a terrible teacher, and
Hmm.
so you got to take what you can get, and
Yeah.
pull the nuggets out of every guy that you can possibly pull out. Because, like we were talking about a little bit earlier, like we all have our own experiences. We all have something. We all have a story, and so trying to pull out the best bits of that story and apply them to your own life is pretty important.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I've noticed too is that you have guys who have served in elite units like yours, Green
Hmm.
Berets, Navy SEALs, Rangers, right?
Yeah.
And got to be in, Delta, you name it, whatever, right? And like
Hmm.
top tier of everything, best operator ever. But I've noticed a commonality is that like a very good high number are horrible fathers, husbands,
Man.
you know,
Yeah.
like do you know what I'm saying? Like, is that
Yeah.
something that
Absolutely,
you
man.
experience? And like, do
Yeah.
you know
Well, this
why?
is part of the reason I got. Yeah.
You know what I
I
mean?
mean,
Like,
no, I don't
why?
know. Everybody's story is different. Yeah. But
Yeah,
I hear you, man.
yeah,
Look, I think it's multifaceted, right?
yeah,
I kind of saw the writing on the wall for me and my family, even coming back from deployment and just realizing. I think you have to do a lot of introspection and kind of see where you're at. You got to gauge yourself, and you got to approach yourself, with some humility and just say, "This is where I'm at. I'm a turd right now as a father. I'm not meeting the standard. I'd rather be in the high bay joking around with the guys, or I'd rather be on ULT than raising my sons and my daughters and being a loving husband." And so we talk a lot in the SEAL teams about the whole man, right? You got to be the whole man, You can't be a great operator and have terrible ethics, right? You
Hmm.
can't be really ethical and be a terrible performer. Like you got to be the whole package in the SEAL
Hmm.
community. And for some reason, when it comes to our marriages and fathering, that part is kind of pushed to the side because the job comes first. And I
Yeah.
understand that to a certain extent, right? You got to perform. You've
Yeah.
got to perform. And your nation expects a certain level of discipline from you, a certain level of proficiency. And so you need to put in as much work as you can to meet that level. That being said, when you're home, it doesn't mean you get to check out. It doesn't mean that I've been putting in the work in the office with the boys and I'm tired and dad's just going to take a nap and watch a movie. You have to be engaging with your children. You can't pawn all that off. Discipling your children to your wife. You're still the head of your house, right? And so
Yeah.
I think it's just one of those things where it's not talked about a lot in the community, perhaps. And
Hmm.
if anything, people will say it, but there's not many examples. There's not many guys that you can actually look up to. And I mean, you know how it is, man. None of us were fathers before we were fathers, right? Like, so you don't know
Exactly.
what you don't know, and
Yeah.
and every man is going to be a little bit different. Every family situation is going to be different. Every wife handles deployments and workups and stuff differently, and
Right.
so you got to approach it with a little bit of grace and again humility and
Yeah.
um, and do the best you can. But dude, I don't know. It's still one of those things where, yeah, you're right. You see these great operators, but they're on their fourth or fifth marriage, and it's tough because like that failure happened for a reason, you know,
Hmm.
and and you hate to see it for them, but it definitely affects the platoon, man. When a guy's going through divorce and they're going through all this messy stuff, I've seen it. It
Yeah.
affects the whole dynamic of the platoon, and so it's important for guys to really put in the effort at home as they put in the effort in the office. I don't want to say like work life balance. I don't like the idea of like balancing because
Yeah.
I don't think that that's very realistic in some situations, especially in the military. It's hard to balance, man, when I'm literally gone more at work
Hmm.
than I am at home. But I think work life harmony works better, right? If everybody, like, if the whole band's in sync, right? I might be playing the drums and I might be beating it loud, right, on the drum set. But if my wife's, if I'm drowning her out on cello, like there's no harmony in our all of our instruments. So we got to work together. We got to find a rhythm that works well for our family. We need to make sure everybody's on the same page of the sheet music, and we got to play together. Because if I'm doing one thing and she's off doing another thing, and my kids are over there, like I'm not running my house right. So
Hmm.
harmonize, try to figure out a system that works really well for your family, and then execute it. I don't know if maybe I just went off a huge tangent there, but
No, man. This is, to me, first of all, this is a very important subject. Fatherhood,
yeah.
being a husband, being a father,
Hmm.
and like I have my inspirations from reading about different warriors. Adam Brown. You probably
Yeah,
heard of his
man.
story
Yep.
from Fearless, for
Amazing
example. That
story. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a dude that like has really inspired me as a person, and just having very um, you know having that experience in my background a little bit, and being
Hmm.
able to relate. I never had drug addiction, but I was
Yeah.
exposed to alcohol addiction in my family and the
Hmm.
abuse and what it led to. And so any case, so that really, again, that inspired me, and different people like that, right?
Hmm.
But like, one of the things that really inspired me about him in specific is when he got his life in order, that how he prioritized his family and that harmony that you talked about, that that
Hmm.
that his wife talks about and is able to share, of how he was able to just turn off everything that was his deployment and be 100% engaged with the family and the kids and so on, and was like 100% there with the boys and the and his daughter and
Yeah,
all,
man.
and so um that to me is like that, that inspires,
For
And
sure.
that's what I try to do too, right? Because I know how easy it is to prioritize the cool guy stuff, you know,
For sure.
and you don't get
Dude.
any cool
Yeah.
guy brownie points for throwing the football with your kid, but
Yeah.
you're winning their heart. You're winning the
Yeah.
heart of that
Or,
young man, that young
yeah.
daughter, right?
Yep.
As
That's right, man.
that you're gonna reap years later. And I
Yep.
think that's the problem, is that we get quick results now being the cool guy operator, but what you forget is you're not going to get the cool guy results in the future when you just you know abandon your kids and your
Right.
wife and
Yeah,
so on,
man.
right?
Yeah. Or you try to plug and play what you do at work to your home life, right? Your
Yeah.
kids aren't going to react the same way to Instructor Hughes,
Yeah,
right? Like my
exactly,
kids
right.
totally blow me up when I when I try to teach them like Instructor Hughes, man.
Yeah,
I have
yeah,
to totally change levels and be
exactly.
different, man. And raising my voice at them doesn't affect them. Like they're like, dude, you're just another dude. Or my wife, she can snap back at me when I give her instructions. Dudes at
Yeah.
work don't necessarily do that, man, or you
Uh-huh.
get punched in the face. And
Yeah.
so it's just a different dynamic, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny.
No, so that to me is important, and I think
It's
it's
beautiful.
important to, this is my encouragement for anyone that's just listen to what you said and what I'm saying. Don't be an operator, don't be a cool guy, that can do your job amazingly on the battlefield, but but when you look at your private life, your personal life, it's all trash.
Hmm.
The ones that I'm going to look up to are the ones that are able to balance that. And
Dude, totally.
my commander in the unit I'm in right now is very good at doing that and encouraging the other
Yeah,
guys. Like when we're just talking and hanging out, right? Um, you know, he makes an effort to bring up his wife, his kids, talk
cool.
about, how amazing his wife is, and so on, not the, oh,
Yeah,
my naggy wife, oh, you're
yeah,
such a cool guy because you just railed on your
yeah,
wife in front of everybody, right? Because
dude,
that's
that's
the
right.
easy thing to
Yeah,
do. Yeah.
one
Oh
flesh,
yeah, my
man.
wife
Yeah,
also complains about that, ha ha ha.
yeah,
No, he doesn't do that, right?
right.
And
That's cool.
and to me, that's a huge plus as a leader, that I really look up to him for doing that, as an
That's
example,
a great
right?
example.
Currently,
Yeah,
you
for
know.
sure. Yeah, man. And with
So
Adam Brown, man, I mean, I think if he were here, he'd say, "Praise be to God." The dude
yeah,
is a born again believer, and a lot of that happens through the process of sanctification, man. Like the Lord
yeah,
reveals things to your heart, in your heart, that you're messed up, and by His grace and goodness, man, like He changes that heart of stone to heart of clay, and He makes you something new. So,
yeah,
um, that's something, again, with that humility aspect, man. Go to your knees to the foot of take your knees to the foot of the cross, man,
mhm,
and humble yourself a little bit, and ask the Lord to change you, and
yeah.
He'll do some work.
What do you do? Because I know, like for me, one of my challenges, right, is I don't have a lot of people in my life
Mm.
that are the operator, the security expert guy, defender, warrior, who are also
Yeah,
spiritual, right?
yeah,
And so like, do you find that challenging, because to me, I think that's part of it, is you need to have
yeah.
somebody, like you just kind of,
You
I
need
think, talk.
somebody to disciple you,
Yeah,
right?
because it's not just like you
Yeah,
and your prayer and your personal
yeah.
relationship with God, right? But I think there's something about having a good relationship with fellow brothers that you can confide with, that
Hmm.
can understand you. And I don't have a lot of that, right? For me
Yeah,
personally, yeah,
yeah, man.
because a lot of the guys that I'll operate with, aren't necessarily on the same page
Different
with me
place.
faith wise,
Yep, yep.
like in my unit, I'm that religious guy, haha, and
Yeah,
like the joke is, when they catch me praying, you
totally.
know, they're like, hey, why don't you put one up for me too while you're at it and for the rest of the team,
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
dude. Hey, that's
and
right,
so
man.
so do you find that as a challenge too, like even now, like,
It
you're
can
not
be.
right.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I think like the biggest thing is like find the guys. Well, first, God's word is the authority, right?
Yeah,
So I'm looking at God's word for wisdom, and I'm seeking Him in prayer, and then I find this is where the body of believers is so important, right? being engaged, and if you're not engaged in a church, you need to be engaged with other believers in some way, right? And in the teams, it's hard because a lot of guys, it's like they don't want to hear anything you have to say unless you're a good operator, right? And so a lot of dudes keep that stuff on a DL. Like I'll let you know I'm a Christian after I let you know I'm a really good operator, right? Because as
Okay,
soon
yeah,
as you're like the Christian dude, you're like, he's a weirdo.
yeah,
I don't know if I trust him. Question red flags go up
yeah,
everywhere. So you have to be a
yeah,
great operator. And
uh-huh,
that's where it's like, dude, you should be performing as you are unto the Lord. Right. So I'm going
hmm,
to be the best freaking operator I can be. I'm going to be the best artist in the studio that I can be. I'm going to outwork,
yeah,
anybody I see in the art world that I can.
yeah,
And so that, you bringing that full level of performance. But then seeking, like you said, you find the guys that are doing it right,
hmm,
and you ask them the hard questions like, hey man, what's your background? If you're not spiritual, um, like where are you drawing it from? Where are you getting it from?
yeah,
And then try to find guys that are like-minded, and then encourage one another, and build each other up. Because I made the mistake, I think, as a young guy, um, having a really, really hard time to relate with guys that aren't in the same boat, right? So, like, I'd go to church on Sunday, and I had a really hard time in a community group with dudes that weren't putting in the hours that I was putting in, and they didn't understand the stress of my job, and I couldn't relate with them, when they're talking about their sales deal that didn't go through, and they're all bummed about it. Where I'm like, dude, two guys just died on deployment. And I'm like, my head's not here right now,
yeah,
and
yeah,
just
yeah,
take it. Yeah. And so it's hard to engage sometimes with people like that. And I would say again, man, you know, try to humble yourself a little bit, um, and realize like God's put everybody in different places, right? So like what's stressful for you, God's put an enormous like load on your shoulders that he expects you to carry. And that dude, that's the load that the Lord's dealt him with.
yeah,
And try to glean some kind of truth, or some kind of wisdom, from what the Lord's doing in his life, and apply it to your situation. Because
yeah,
one of the best pieces of advice I got in the teams was from a guy in my small group that had never served in the military, had no military experience, hadn't done any kind of like special operations training or anything like that. And he just pointed out, a Bible story that like cut me to the core, and if I wouldn't have been in the right time, right place emotionally, just to, you know, not hold all that in, not hold what I'm going through but be vulnerable with somebody, even though they might not understand the
yeah,
situation, man. Like God's word pierces bone, marrow, sinew, joint, everything. So
yeah,
put yourself in a position where somebody can and preach God's word to you. Um,
yeah,
if that helps, man. I don't know
yeah.
if that answers your question.
No, it's good. And like I said, I find it hard for me, as far as like personal relationships of people around me
Yeah.
where I'm at. What I've done throughout the years, though, is I've had the privilege of being able to have men develop relationships with men who have a background either in SWAT team or
Hmm.
other fast teams of whatnot, and they have that experience. They, not the same, but right,
Yeah.
they've had the life under threat experience, training with weapons and all that, and tactics, guys you can shoot with and hang out with, and but that's like they're spread around the world, right? And
Yep.
so for me, I try to keep up with them, right, and keep them in the loop of what's happening, and they'll encourage me and I'll encourage them. And so I would say, just for me, like what works for me, yeah, is that you can develop that relationship and find people like that. They're
Hmm.
like-minded and whatever,
For
and that
sure.
it's important, right? And not to
Yeah.
close yourself off and write everyone off, like you were pointing out, that you
Yeah.
write everyone off because oh, you're not an operator, you don't know what I'm going through, you know
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
being open to let that nerd talk into your life, yeah,
Yeah,
that
man.
that
Yeah, dude.
like,
Yeah,
what
totally.
do you know about conflict, bruh? you
Yeah.
know
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah,
And sometimes
it
everybody's
takes
naive to
humility.
something to a certain level. Yeah. Just humble yourself though, and
Yeah.
take what the Lord's given you.
Yeah.
That's the
And
truth,
so,
man.
yeah. And so I think that's important. And if you're in that world that, we've been in, and you feel like, you can't relate to other people, then I encourage you to try to reach out and to try to, try to find something, someone, because it's
Yeah.
not good to be, to be out from, like right now, you're out of
Yeah.
your military service, right? And that
Hmm.
background is now behind you, and now you're trying to plug into normal life. In fact, why don't you talk about that and the challenges of that, and how did you navigate that, and then what led you specifically, I guess, into artwork?
Yeah. Oh, dude, that's a good one. Well, so I guess I'd have to backtrack to go into what I'm doing now. You got to talk about my time as an instructor a little bit. Yeah, I got to that place though where I was home a lot more, right? And I realized, I remember being a young guy and being really excited about my kid, like having kids one day and engaging with them and being a certain type of father. I don't know what the picture I had of like what kind of dad I was going to be, but like whatever I was in as a buds instructor was not, the picture that I envisioned.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, man, something's got to change, and I loved the job. I love the SEAL teams, dude. I think if I wasn't a father or married, I would be there 100%, still there. But the Lord just kind of worked in my heart and pointed out some stuff, that some idols, maybe even the SEAL teams just kind of became an idol for me. And I had to make some changes. And one of the outlets I had as a kid growing up in Southeast Asia was drawing. So I drew a lot, and I had done a couple tattoos for some guys in the SEAL teams, but I hadn't really messed with like the art world too much. And as an instructor, you got a little bit more free time, right? So you can pick up some, maybe your old hobbies. A lot of guys do woodworking and welding and that kind of stuff. And I picked up drawing again a little bit.
Yeah.
And I painted a picture of the SEAL trident, which is the eagle, the trident, and the flintlock, and the anchor, and all that. And I brought it in, and I put it in my office. And one of the guys I was working with was like, "Hey, man, where'd you get that picture?" And I said, "Oh, I painted that." It's like, you painted that, and you freaked out, wanted a print. I sold him a print, and next thing I knew, there's like a line of dudes that wanted prints. And it was the first thing that I did that I was like, man, I'm really proud of this
Yeah.
little painting. I was really
Yeah.
proud of the work that I did. And I didn't like, there was nothing else in my life that I had done for a job that I felt any kind of like fulfillment or like joy in doing.
Hmm.
And, and I had been just praying that the Lord would reveal to me, like, hey God, if you're pulling me out of the teams, like, show me where you want me to go next, just like open the doors, because I don't know what to do. And I think that's a big challenge a lot of guys experience getting out, is just they become so accustomed. They love the job, but for whatever reason, either politics, the bureaucracy, their bodies, or whatever it is, they don't know what to do when they get out.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to leave and put my family in a position of, insecurity, right, financially or whatever, without having something lined up. And the print thing did really well while I was in the teams, and I was like, hey man, maybe I could make this work down the road. I don't know what it would look like as an artist, but it'd be really cool to do art one day. And so I just kind of logged that in the back of my mind, started networking a little bit. Fast forward, ended up getting out of the teams with the goal to be an artist at some point. I got a technical job, dude, and I was just like so depressed, just working in the literally, dude, I was in the like a cubicle, what you'd picture,
You did a
and
cubicle
just
job?
hating life, dude. I'm embarrassed to say it, but yeah, I did. And
No, I mean, that's,
nothing against my cubicle bros out there,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I had to pay the bills, man. I'm like, I'm not above
Yeah.
it. I'll work at a
Yeah. Yeah.
McDonald's if I have to.
Yeah.
Like, I'll
Yeah.
do whatever I have to do to provide for my family. Um, but yeah, I was in a cubicle job. That doesn't mean I'm going to be happy doing it,
Yeah.
but I
But
was
that's a bold
grateful
move,
for
I
where the
think. I
Lord
mean,
put me.
honestly, you know what I'm saying?
You,
Like
you just gotta do, yeah.
because I think too many guys who would have been in your position would be like, "Oh, that's beneath me. I'm not going to do that."
Oh yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Like from
dude.
a
I
pride
thought
issue.
that about me. I had
Yeah.
the pride, but
Yeah.
the Lord humbled me,
But
man. Like
you're
it was the
providing for your
only
family, and that's the important
dude.
part here,
Yeah, I put out
right?
hundreds of job applications, dude. And
Yeah.
as much as people say, yo, we love our SOF and we love our vets, dude, it's hard to get a job, man. It can be hard to get
Yeah.
a job.
Yeah.
The skill transfer isn't really, it's
You're
hard to
right.
articulate that. And
Exactly.
I was very fortunate. I had a couple opportunities in other places, but this was kind of like the best paying job for getting
Hmm.
out. And I was like, I didn't expect to stay there forever.
Yeah.
But it was a comfortable place to go. Coming
Yeah.
straight out of the teams, it was a good spot for my family. It was local, it was where we wanted to settle down. So I'm like, dude, I'll just take whatever I can get.
Yeah.
If all I could get was McDonald's, man, I'd flip the best burgers.
That's right.
And so yeah, I got that job, and it was tough, man. It was really hard mentally.
Yeah.
I'd be doing the 9 to 5 thing, and then painting after the kids went to bed till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and then wake up, rinse, and repeat.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
dude, it was tough mentally, man, because I'm still attached to the teams. I'm going through this transition. I'm used to being around the guys all the time, and now I'm just kind of like locked up at home. And then COVID happens,
Oh
and the
yeah.
whole world falls apart, and
Yeah.
it was a dark place, man. I was definitely, feeling some anxiety and some depression there.
Sure.
But the Lord provides, and I found a great community of guys here that not all SEALs. I know a couple of them that are here, but that have just been a fountain of of life for me, in that they preach the gospel to me. They encourage me artistically, and yeah, man, I've just found that if I'm in a spot where I'm struggling, right, mentally or whatever, if I'm missing the brotherhood, man, I bring that to the Lord, and I ask Him to, for whatever reason, Lord, I don't know if it's an idol or if I'm just clinging to something that I'm not anymore.
Mm.
But dude, I took that trident and pounded it at the foot of the cross, man. That's a part of me that I loved, and I enjoyed serving.
Yeah.
But I'm going to use it, man, now as a ministry to use this art thing and proclaim the gospel if I can,
Yeah.
um, and to hopefully encourage other young men or women to honor faithfully, and to serve God. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's a hard question because I still struggle with that sometimes. Like the internal struggle of like, dude, I'm a team guy, I'm a painter, I'm on social media, and they have that whole quiet professional stigma around it. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of that's naivety. Um, the the way that guys kind of approach that, when they don't understand the context of getting out. But I'm very fortunate in that I had a good reputation when I was in the teams, and I still talk with a lot of the guys that I was in. They're not strangers, they haven't ridden me off or anything like that. But
Right.
I'm in a different place now, man. I'm fully focused on being a loving husband and father.
Yeah.
And dude, I paint to make money, for my family,
Yeah.
and um, and hopefully tell a good story, and be an encouragement to people if I can be. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Like,
Yeah.
because you're going through the rotation and you have to go back home. You know, you're moving right across the street. You're not.
Yeah.
You don't get to take the rotation cycle
Yeah.
and go on trips with the guys necessarily. Like you have to come home at the end of the day after war. So how does that work for you?
Yeah. It's it's definitely challenging.
Yeah.
I know for me, one of the like most bizarre things was when I first got back to civilization after like I think 4 weeks or so that we were straight on nonstop, in war. It was just like, there's people that are at cafes and, you know, life is going
Yeah.
on like
Life is
normal,
normal.
but there's a part of
Yeah.
the country that is like literally you can't even enter these
Yeah.
civilian cities that are ghost towns. And that's our
Hmm.
fob. Like our fobs were in Jewish communities, towns, cities,
Yep.
along the Gaza
Like
border.
your neighbors' homes.
Yeah, dude, I'm talking about
Yeah.
like in cities. We're
Yeah.
in cities, okay? We had a few fobs, like a few of them were schools, like where they opened up their dormitories for us to be able to use to sleep in and shower and clean up and whatever in between missions, whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just so bizarre, man. It's so bizarre because like the whole city's like a ghost town. They've all been displaced, right, to
Right.
hotels across the country that were not in the hot zone.
Hmm.
And um, t- yeah, it's not easy at all, man. It's not easy at all. I wish our conflicts were somewhere else and that I could just leave the bad guys over there,
Right.
but they're my neighbor. They're my
Yeah.
neighbor, and sometimes also they live amongst us, sadly, as
Mm.
well. You have literally you have terrorists. They're Israelis, okay,
Yeah.
Jewish, Arab, it doesn't matter. Like we have that as well. It's not just coming from the
Yeah.
Muslim side. You even have Israeli terrorists. I mean, that I would consider to be terrorists. Maybe others will say otherwise, but
Mm.
they're definitely enemies of the state. They're definitely enabling and the helping of the enemies of Israel to kill
Yeah.
Jews and so on. And so you
Hmm.
have that too. But it's yeah, it's very complex. And I know for me, one of the hardest things during the war actually was where our first posting in one of the towns that we cleared from these ISIS terrorists. Okay, which I'm going to
Yep.
lead into this with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but seeing the path of destruction and bodies and charred vehicles and the smell of death in the air, which I'm sure you're familiar with, that
Yeah.
is probably one of the it it will jar you. And
Yeah.
but the thing that really was the hardest for me on an emotional level was listening to the children of the neighbors that decided to move back in as soon as they could and chose not to stay at the hotel but to come back home,
Mm.
even though home was still sketchy and where
Yeah.
there was possible terrorists hold up at the neighbors, because we were
Mm.
clearing houses in these
Yeah.
neighborhoods. And so it wasn't like 100% safe to come back, but they were like, no, we're coming back.
Yeah.
And they were supporting us and like, hey, come to my house and use the showers and and all this. But listening to his son cry himself to sleep at night because of the horrors of what the kids saw, because I knew,
Right.
when you have kids, the sound of kids that
Yeah.
cry because they're frustrated, they want to go sleep. I'm telling you, the
Right.
cries that these kids were crying, it was terror cries,
Right.
and it just broke me, and then
Yeah.
them looking at me in the daytime when we would engage with the neighbors, and they would hang on to the dad because they saw a man in uniform, because the terrorists
Hmm.
dressed like us. They dressed like
Right.
soldiers and soldier in
Mm.
IDF uniforms and carried out their attacks. And it just was like, you know what I mean? It's just like winning the hearts and minds of your own
Yeah.
people. Like, really?
Yeah.
Like, what kind of screwed up reality is this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
mean, so
upside
it's
down
definitely
world.
difficult, brother. I mean, it's definitely
Yeah. Is
difficult.
that something you guys talk about, like, as a community?
Yeah,
Even just the challenges of going back home to your wives and kids and having to
yeah,
bring that home. Are there guys that is that something that just guys recognize and you guys can share with each other? Or is that, because that's the dynamic of warfare that I haven't experienced, man, to be completely
yeah.
honest with you, is it's like Americans don't fight, in America,
Yeah.
really.
Thank God. Thank
And
God.
so, yeah, praise the Lord. But is there an aspect to your service that, sorry if I'm turning the interview around,
No, that's cool, man. I
because this
like
is
it.
really interesting to me. This
Yeah.
is really interesting to me. But yeah, is that something that you guys recognize and that you talk about, or is that just kind of like, yeah, that's part of the job? Just move
Yeah.
move along, keep your head down, and keep
Yeah.
grinding.
Yeah, we definitely talk about it. We in my the group of guys I'm with, we talk about it. We talk about the challenges, and we've also tried. I mean, we've had group sessions where we just discuss
Hmm.
all the crap we just been through,
Good. Yeah.
because all of
Cool.
us have gone through some serious trauma during this war,
Hmm.
and the just the crud that we've experienced, and trying to get that processed, because we recognize the dangers of post trauma, and what could happen if your head's not in the right space and the right headspace
Hmm.
and so on, right? So we've been pretty good at that, I think, it
Cool.
really trying to process that through, and also one of our team guys actually is he works for post trauma nonprofit here in Israel, and also travels
Awesome.
the world and helps with that as well in other countries. And
Cool.
so it's a good asset to have in our team, but that's not the norm. And
Yeah.
and unfortunately, one of the guys during this war a few weeks ago took his life because he couldn't get back to normal life, I guess you could say, and just the
Mm-hmm.
demons were too
Yeah.
much. And so that's another casualty, right? Unfortunately.
Yeah.
um, and then we also have casualties post the attacks of the survivors from the terrorist attacks that witness all of those
Yeah, man.
horrors, and they've taken their lives too, unfortunately. So this is also something I think that is
Sheesh.
not typically talked about on the media.
Yeah.
We just talk about the suffering of one side and overemphasize
Yep.
that, which, not
For sure.
to belittle that at all. Whatever's happening on the Gazan side for the Gazans themselves, that's not acceptable to me either. They don't need to
Mm-hmm.
live through that terror. Obviously, they're affected by that as well. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about their suffering, but the difference is, though, they picked it. We didn't.
Right.
They picked that
Right.
leadership. They picked
Yeah.
to support, aiding and abetting terrorists, legit aiding and abetting the
Sure.
terrorists, um, and so on. So it's a different dynamic for sure. But even still, yet I'm like, they don't deserve that. The children don't deserve losing their childhood because of propagating,
Man.
terror and
Sad. Yeah, it's
hatred of.
heartbreaking, man.
But tell me about, like, what you guys faced during your time with ISIS, because I think there's a lot of similarity
Right.
between the MOD, right? The
Right.
wait, no, mode of
What's that?
what's that? What they do,
What's the word? Who do? Sorry.
the enemy, like their tactics
Oh,
are
yeah, their SOP, their standard
SOP,
operating procedures. Yeah, I don't know, dude. All the acronyms are all over the place with every.
right?
I don't. Yeah, dude. It sounds very similar. I don't think. Well, ISIS was pretty brutal. Like, just publicly, obviously, the attacks in Israel were very similar. It's openly broadcasted, videoed, recorded. All the evidence that you need is pretty much on the internet.
Yeah,
And it was very similar with ISIS. They very obviously wanted people to know that they were evil, right?
yeah,
And so at that point, the lines to me are very. It's not. I mean, it's pretty black and white. You're bad, we're good, and we're going to crush this.
yeah,
Where it does get challenging, and like you said, you're bringing in the civilian population, and this is male headship. This is fathers as leaders. This is men as leaders of countries. When you choose to bring women and children into the battlefield, you're taking responsibility for what positions you're putting your people into. So if you're a father and you're a combatant, and you run into your house with your children, you're now volunteering them for war.
yeah,
And they that as children, they don't get a voice for that. And
yeah,
we can do our best to mitigate whatever we can. But my goodness, man, like, it's that kind of stuff gets very complicated. And I don't think anybody. Well, I can't speak for. I obviously cannot speak for the United States military. I don't speak for Israel, but like,
yeah,
I don't know any team guys that were excited about that. Dealing
yeah.
with a situation like that. And I
Basically,
don't think
being drawn
anybody
into a
being drawn
private
into a
home
room with,
because the terrorist
drawn into
is.
a room with
Yeah,
kids, like, no,
yeah,
or women and children, like, nobody wants to deal with that.
yeah,
And so I think every team guy or operator or soldier takes that very seriously, and they
yeah,
want to do the right thing. Like, I don't want to live with, the knowing that I contributed to making matters worse, right? I want to make this better. I want to make the situation better. I want justice to be dealt swiftly. I want um, I want the victims to receive their due process, and the perpetrators to be eliminated.
Yeah.
essentially. And so,
Yeah.
dude, yeah, Israel situation is probably pretty similar to Mosul, but Mosul was kind of an invading force in or Israel. I'm sorry. ISIS was an invading force into the Mosul, and they kind of stirred the pot. They had a long time to build up a defense,
Hmm.
and it's similar to kind of what you guys are dealing with. But they've been there a lot longer than ISIS was in Mosul, So they've had a
Yeah.
long
Right.
time. I mean, dude, look at the tunnel systems you guys are dealing
Yep.
with. They had some
Yep.
pretty elaborate tunnel systems in Mosul, but my
Yeah.
goodness, some of the videos I'm seeing with you guys is just next level stuff. And
Yeah.
but yeah,
But that's
man,
the kind of
I
stuff
think
you
it's
ran into as well, was tunnel warfare,
oh yeah,
where the
oh
where the
yeah,
enemy
man.
would go into a home and then pop out somewhere else in a school or
Dude,
whatever,
yeah,
and
or they'd have
mosque.
homes, the apartment buildings, and it's just like tunnels built, blown through wall to wall to wall to wall, so they could just run from one side of the building to the other, or and then a tunnel here to go over that building. Yeah,
Yep.
man, it was just a rat's nest. It was a mess to
And
deal
were
with.
they
So,
doing that to draw you into the civilian population? So knowing that the world media would and opinion would kind of turn on
uh,
you, was that
I
part of
think,
their tactic
yeah,
or?
I'm sure in part, of course, every time you're in some kind of urban environment, the media is concerned about the civilian population.
Yeah.
They only care about the civilian population as long as it's like, newsworthy. The October attacks was a couple days. It was like a day event. So they reported on it for a day, and now Israel's in the thick of it, and
Yeah.
they just want to report on, what's going on in that moment, and however they can
Yeah.
spin it to best suit their agenda is what they're going to do. So, but yeah, man,
Yeah.
they try to, if it wasn't to, I think fortunately a lot of the local population, they wanted to get out, right? They weren't necessarily ISIS sympathizers. They were if they could evacuate, they would. And in fact, a lot of people that did try to evacuate, ISIS would just shoot and kill.
Okay.
So yeah, so I think we were a lot more fortunate than you guys in that there wasn't so much sympathy for
The
ISIS
bad
in the
guys.
area that
Yeah.
we were operating. Yeah,
Yeah.
whereas with you guys, it seems like they're like all about um, assisting in the war effort, so
Yeah.
to say, or so
No,
to speak.
you're right.
But
That's a big difference for
but
sure.
yeah, there is. Yeah. And so like a lot of the places that we'd enter to, the civilians were already trying to leave if ISIS hadn't already killed them. So piles of bodies out on the street that ISIS had taken
Man.
care of before we even got into the area. And so, in the tunnel systems and stuff, I think for us was more just to for ambush purposes.
Yeah.
They dig up tunnels to try to get around us or pull us into a
I
section and
see.
pop up somewhere else. So, and you guys
Hmm.
are probably dealing with something similar as
Correct.
far as their tactics.
Correct. Correct. Exactly. So it's both.
Yeah.
They're using it for propaganda because they know that if we attack them and retaliate from a rockets fired from a civilian
Right.
location,
Yep.
or or sniper fire, whatever, when you fire a tank round at it, or an airstrike from a fighter chopper or plane, then it makes us look bad because now we
Sure.
struck a so-called civilian target,
Right.
which it's not, because we've
Right.
gathered intel, we have soldiers on the ground, we have drones in
Hmm.
the air, and we know for sure this is not a civilian locale based on all that intel. And that's how we basically assess how we're going to react to it.
Yeah.
While at the same time, yeah, you're right. They'll go into the tunnels and then pop out to make a dirty
Hmm.
attack on you and on an ambush and so on, right? And but they're using the urban environment to do so.
Yep.
Um, but for you in Mosul, were the people that were affected, the civilians that were affected, were they Christian? Were they Muslim? Were they something else? Like,
Yeah. I
was
think it
there a
was a
reason
mix, man.
why ISIS targeted these people?
I think it was just a mix, man. And honestly, I, if they couldn't use them as shields, then they were pretty much useless for them.
Okay.
If they weren't going to participate, then they were useless, and they were non-believers. So, uh, no point in having them around. And so
Wow.
they deal with them. And I think a lot of that, man, honestly wasn't even probably reported. Mosul was such a big battle that like nobody, reporters and stuff weren't going in. It was so dangerous. In fact, like reporters that did go in, they would like end up getting stuck and we'd have to go in and rescue them. And so it was just it was a mess of a battlefield. But even the
Yeah.
Muslims that were coming out, and were waving white flags and we were receiving, they were like, super grateful, kissing our cheeks, and
Yeah.
so glad to be out of the situation. Um, but yeah, man, it was a little bit of a different situation than I think what you guys are dealing with, unfortunately. And again, I think it's in part because they've been there so long, right? They've been a part of the
Yeah.
system for so long there in
Yeah.
Gaza that
You're
it's
right.
hard. That indoctrination and that upbringing is all. It's been years, years, and years in the making.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been 20 years that they've been building up all the infrastructure
Yep.
and so on for this war.
Hmm.
And a few other conflicts leading up to, but it's been about I would say exactly about 20 years of them
Jeez.
doing that. Since we pulled out in 2005.
Mm.
Okay, nearly 20 years. Um, so you're right. I mean, it's a long time
Yeah.
of being able to build all that infrastructure and all that, and such a mess. But you just mentioned something that kind of piqued my curiosity, because this is something that I've had a conversation with a former Green Beret that basically bashed Israel and said that what we're doing is committing genocide, and just went on this rant, right? And
Mm.
it got spread on social media. It kind of went viral, and
Interesting.
yeah, and then I replied to it, and I was like, bro, not cool, whatever. And and basically challenged and said, first of all, what he's saying is not true at all, but okay. And I'm willing to have a conversation with this guy.
Mm.
And we ended up having a 2-hour conversation, not recorded, which this time I kind of wish I had it recorded,
Right.
because it would
Yeah.
have been a good thing to get out, because it's like the views that he was holding are just so like, what in the world, man? And even in our conversation, the one to one, one of the things he kept firing at me was, well, why don't you let the media into where you're operating? Like it says, like he was basically accusing us of, like, as if we're trying to
Yeah.
hide
Like
what we're doing.
hiding. Yeah. Hide.
And I
Yeah.
was like,
Totally.
I said, weren't you part of like an high value target unit? Okay, that went and eliminated bad guys. Like, you would get a care package of, like, here's the bad guy, go get him. Like,
Right.
you would take a reporter with you on those missions, and it's
Yeah.
like he just
Not
gave the
likely.
impression, like, oh yeah, that's exact, like, what I'm saying. He wouldn't really
Yeah.
directly. And so, you like what you
Yeah.
mentioned, right? Is like the media doesn't go to where it's really hot. Well, it's
Right.
the same here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a huge
Yeah.
similarity right there. And I'm going, wait,
Yeah.
wait, wait. I'm calling bullshit here, right? Like, bro.
Yeah, man.
So is that correct? Like,
Yeah,
both Green
certainly.
Berets, Navy SEALs, do you bring along with you media on these
No, man.
high
Absolutely not.
sensitive
No.
secret missions? And why not?
No.
Can you please kind of clear that out for me, brother?
Yeah. No, man. Yeah, we don't. Well, we don't bring them because they have no business with us, right? They have
Yeah.
no reason to be with us. They can't hang with us, frankly. Um,
Yeah.
and and honestly, it's one of those things. Like, would it be helpful for them, maybe, to understand like how actual crazy it is?
Yeah.
Sometimes maybe it might be beneficial. Um, but the reality of the matter is, man, is it's like we have a job to do and we have to execute it right, like, now. And we don't have time to loop you in and keep you up to date.
Yeah.
Like, we've been training for this. This is what we do. And this you write stories, you take pictures. Like, if you want to risk your life and run into the front lines, hey, man, that's on you. But it's definitely not something that I see. I can't speak as to like why the United States military doesn't have like reporters on the front line, right? But I just couldn't see that being very beneficial or helpful for the SEAL community, right? Say they get shot, and now I have to do a medevac for an American citizen that, like, is complete. Like, they didn't know, hey, you don't stand in front of a window when there's a
Yeah.
gunfight going on, right? Like,
Right.
I mean, it's
For
silliness,
example.
but you see new guys do it. When you're
Yeah.
training. So there's just so many TTVs. Where are you going to stand in the train? What are you going to do when we have to get into a target quick and there's gun bullets flying through the doorway?
Yeah.
So it just doesn't seem very reasonable to, or a very reasonable expectation for
Yeah.
people to, bring people like that along on an operation. Um, yeah, man, it's a challenge because everybody wants to know what's going on. Everybody wants to know the truth.
Yeah.
Um, and the reality of the matter, I think, with a situation like this is like, look, man, if Israel laid down their guns and disarmed themselves, they would be completely eliminated. They would be wiped off the earth. But if Gaza and Hamas surrendered today, there would be peace.
Yeah.
They would run it peacefully. And so I think just in that that simplifies the picture a little bit, um,
Yeah.
in my eyes. And I'm sure I have some of my own biases, and there's parts of the story that I might be missing, but it
Yeah.
seems pretty clear to me.
Yeah. Well, I definitely can attest to that. That's exactly
Yeah,
what it boils down to. The Jewish people do not have any desire in war. We've lost enough people as it is in
sure.
war,
Yeah,
so
man.
we know the cost good enough to want
Yeah,
to avoid it at all costs, and that's the
right.
truth. And no, we're not trying to hide our operations by not allowing the media to tag along. It's literally what you just said. It's like,
Yeah,
bro,
dude,
like
that's just kind of
why?
silliness saying that. Yeah,
Yeah, and we let the media in, by the way. We do let the media
yeah,
in, and
yeah,
the media has been brought in where we could and whatever. But then
sure,
what I pointed out to this guy too, I said, listen, I said, there's also, these are classified missions that are being
sure.
conducted. I do not want anyone to know about this. Okay, even
Hmm.
it's on a need to know basis. So even other units in the military, like mine, okay, I'm not going to know what a tier 1 unit that what kind of
Sure.
secret squirrel mission they're doing. I'm
Yep.
not going to know about it. I
Right.
see them training,
Totally.
preparing. Yeah, and was
That's right,
was
man.
was in the vicinity of the guys who carried out the first hostage rescue mission of the two Argentinian guys.
Mm.
So we were firsthand involved in and
In that
around, but I
operation.
had
Yeah.
no clue what those guys were doing. I only found out
Right.
later. I was like, okay, I knew it. I
Okay.
knew it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That kind of
That's
thing,
awesome. Yeah.
right? And so it's like, just put yourself in my shoes, right? It's like, are you like, and I tried to have like a serious conversation with this guy, but I just wanted to throw that at you because it's like
Yeah.
he was like kind of rolling his eyes at my answers, and I'm like, what is your deal, brother? Like, come on, you
Yeah.
know?
Dude, for sure. And of course, I think some of this is
You
like,
know?
this is so over our heads. Like, we're talking about nations, we're talking about
Yeah,
nation level decision making. And
yeah,
I'm no expert on, public affairs or
yeah,
media by
yeah,
any means, but I can tell you those two worlds don't really mix too well.
yeah, yeah,
That bringing a camera to a gunfight isn't necessarily the best choice.
yeah.
So
Or how about
I would
this?
try to
Like,
avoid that if I could.
what do you think of the BBC's statement about, why didn't the IDF notify the neighbors before they carried out this last hostage rescue mission?
Oh, geez, dude. Oh,
Right?
come on. Give me a
Eh,
break,
but
dude.
that's what you guys do,
Come on,
right? Isn't that
dude.
what the SEALs
Yeah.
did before you
We
went
might
to
as
go get
well now,
Osama bin
man. We
Laden?
might as well.
Isn't that
Yeah.
right?
We might as yeah, exactly. We
You
might as
told the
well now,
neighbors clear out.
Hey, we're coming to Iraq. That's what we
Anything.
do to all
So
of our conflicts, it seems.
right, right. So in other words, you guys don't do that, correct? Right?
No, I don't think I'm
When you're
not
doing a
aware of. I
hostage
bet I
rescue,
hope not.
right?
Yeah, that's not
Common
happening, man.
sense. Common sense.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
exactly.
yeah, I just want to make sure that you know what I mean. The people that are
Yeah,
tracked along in this conversation, hopefully they understand like that we have a lot in common.
right.
And another reason why I'm personally insulted by a Green Beret who makes a statement against our military who actually
Mm,
served in the Middle Eastern
mm,
part of the world. Okay. Um, if you're part of fifth group, for example, right? I think you have a little bit of, how to say, you kind of owe us a little bit of respect because
mm.
part of what a lot of the world isn't really aware of, and I think while at the same time, anyone who has served in any of those units, you probably know full well that you do come through here on rotation. And we're the ones who help give you your tools before you go uh,
Yeah,
deploy to one of these Muslim countries that you
right.
know nothing about. And we
Mm,
help build up that mindset, that, training in our bases, in
That full
our
picture.
cooperation. And the same with the SEAL community, right? I mean, our SEALs train your guys train our guys. There's a
Yeah,
cooperation going on here. We're on the same
sure.
freaking team. And
That's right,
correct me
man.
if I'm wrong, but that's what I happen to know. Through the guys I hang
Yeah,
out with, the plaques that are
yeah,
on their wall.
that's
Okay.
right. Yep.
So either those are fake plaques, you know, and they're lying to me
Everybody's lying. Yeah,
about where they've been, and and
right.
and and how they, how
Who
they
they've
talk
engaged
about
with.
culture
Yeah,
shock, yeah, and, and
yep.
and laughing about, oh man, they had a McDonald's on their base over there, man,
Dude, for
and stuff
sure.
like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
We got them.
yeah, yeah.
That's
So
it.
so there is a cooperation going on there, right? I
Yeah.
mean, there is a.
Yeah.
Have you gotten to see any of that, or is that something you're allowed to talk about, or?
Are you talking about like with your like special forces and stuff, like what we've
Yeah,
done with you guys?
yeah,
So on I know it happens.
yeah,
Of course. I think Israel's like one of our biggest allies, and so there's
yeah,
definitely some cross training. I've seen Israeli special forces, and I'm not familiar. I'm sorry, with all the units that come through or like do the dive training, but we've had Israelis participate in some of our training, or at least audit some of the training, our training
right,
pipeline. So but as far as the detailed level of operations and what the United States is actively doing in Israel currently, and like the level of
yeah,
their participation in what we're doing
yeah,
overseas,
yeah,
I couldn't really speak to that too much, man. Honestly,
yeah,
I haven't worked with you guys on a professional battlefield level. Um,
yeah,
I wish I had. I wish I had, as I've said to that, told you
yeah,
on IG
yeah,
Messenger.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it would have been cool to be there, man.
That's awesome. So yeah, I just wanted to, people understand there is because Israel's an ally to the United States, and there
Yep.
is a cooperation going on.
Yep.
We don't do missions together. Again, not that I'm
Yeah.
allowed to even talk about if
Yeah.
there is.
Right.
But that's not the case, right? It's the
Right.
fact that there is cooperations. There is we help you, you help us.
Yep.
The same with Jordan, by the way. For people who are not aware of, right?
Mm.
The big special forces display that happens in Miami every year. You
Hmm.
know, I think I don't know if you're up to speed on that, but I mean,
I've heard about it. I
it's
haven't
like,
been to it or anything. Yeah. Yeah. I know what you're talking
yeah,
about, though.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you have these countries, they'll come, and there's
Yeah.
there's displays,
The
there's
little
this, there's that,
displays. Yep.
there's a
Yep.
cooperation, because these are countries where they're an asset to you, and
Right.
and vice versa, right?
Yep.
And so it's not just Israel here that we're talking about; it's other countries all over the world, right?
Hmm.
In different bases where you have in strategic places, and because you need to build those relationships.
Yeah.
And I think
Certainly.
that's something that people need to understand, that when you rail on Israel, you're railing on one of the United States allies in the world, and one of the
Yeah.
United States allies in the Middle East, period, that
Right.
heavily relies on to help your mission success, especially in the 20-year war in
For sure,
Afghanistan, in
man.
Iraq. And,
Yeah. I'm sure there was a lot of turnover there because you guys have been
so,
fighting this fight for a long time.
yeah. So,
You
so
know,
yeah, so that's important for me. People need to understand. Like, I have
for
respect
sure.
for the United States. Israel has
Yeah.
respect for the United States. Okay, and
Sure.
especially for those of us who have had those cooperations and those cross trainings and so on.
Yep.
And we get to brag, of course. Like, oh, I got to be on, do that, dive
Yeah. Yeah.
course.
Of
Right?
course.
And I
Yeah.
imagine, the U.S. guys, like, oh, I got to go shoot at a
For
shoot
sure,
house
dude.
in
I got to go
Israel,
to the
right?
sniper course. Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
And so
Definitely.
and that's good, and we need to keep those relationships,
Definitely.
because they are beneficial. They're helping each other.
Absolutely.
But on
Yeah.
on another note, so you got into drawing or painting, rather, right?
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah. I
said, you
picked up
started with
painting.
like kind of,
Yep.
was it freehand
Yeah.
sketching
Just like
and stuff as a kid?
pen and ink. Yeah. As a kid, was
Yeah.
primarily what I was working with.
But what got you into painting? Because that is a whole different animal.
Yeah. It's a different game, man. I don't know. I figured like, you always watch like these shows and stuff and you see what people paint on the internet and you're like, I can paint that. I can do that. And, And I was like,
Really?
I knew I could draw pretty good, and I
Yeah.
I just figured why not? Like I'm gonna go to the craft store and get some paint supplies and try to paint this picture. It'd be cooler anyway than black and white. So picked up
Yeah.
a paintbrush and some paints on the way home from work and got to it. And dude, I just fell in love with the craft, man. It's like anything, any kind of training that you go through or whatever, you're gonna mess up, you're gonna fail, but you learn through your mistakes. And I think art's one of those things where you can instantly see how bad something is.
Yeah.
Like you can look at it and be like, dude, this does not look like what I wanted it to look like, or this is not how it's supposed to be. And you can immediately critique it. And so if you can, just coming from the background of special forces, you see a lot of bad to get to the
Yeah.
good. And you approach that art with a level of humility and just say, all right, well, these are the lessons I learned from this piece. Let's move forward and try to be better next time. And then
Yeah.
don't make the same mistakes. Don't make the same mistakes. So you
Yeah.
can continually progress in that process. And I'm super fortunate that I picked up to it pretty quickly. A lot of it, I think, is just obviously God given talent. The Lord's blessed me with an eye to see it maybe, and I'm
Hmm.
grateful for it. But yeah, man, just putting in the work, putting in the hours to make it happen.
Was this
Yeah,
self-learned, or did you go to
yeah, dude.
courses?
This now the school of YouTube, man. You can learn
Are you
everything
kidding
on
me,
YouTube, don't you know? Yeah, dude. You didn't know that? You can learn anything on YouTube now, man. You
dude?
don't need to go to college anymore.
Like, you need to
Yeah.
understand, like, I went and studied art. Okay. I went to art school growing up. Okay. So pre-high
Wait, for real?
school and high school. Yeah.
No way. I
So,
didn't know that.
so,
That's
well, that's why
amazing.
I'm following you, dude. I mean, because it's
Yeah.
like I can appreciate what you're
That's
doing.
awesome. I love it,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
Bro, I want
So,
to see some of your work.
no, I don't paint. I don't paint. So that's the
Well, we
thing.
can
So
figure something out.
I learned all of that stuff to sketch, to draw. So different, the
Yeah.
different grain
Yeah.
of the
The
pencils, right, or whatever,
Yep.
right? The different
Yep.
H's.
Yep. HHB. Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
And then what is it? Uh, Clay work
Oh,
and
cool, dude. So you did like
yeah,
sculpting and all that stuff too. Cool.
sculpting, and then oil paints and this paints and that,
Yes.
and
Awesome.
like you
Yeah.
learn all the different disciplines of art, right? And
Yep.
then art history and all that stuff. And
Awesome.
to me, that was an outlet because of just the really hard childhood that I had, with
Yeah.
some bad things that I had when I grew up. And I would I would just sketch in class. It was like
Mm,
my way of just kind of like escaping in a
totally.
way,
Yep.
you know? And I would
Yep.
do more cartoonish kind of stuff. I didn't do like I would do serious things too,
More
so to
like a
speak, like as
yeah.
in, yeah, like a sketch or
Yeah.
whatever. But then I would do also like just make up my own kind of cartoony kind of stuff.
Totally.
And then at some point after when I started high school, um, I had to pick which route to go, and I actually I fell in love with photography, and that was the route
Oh,
I ended
cool,
up
man.
taking, and that became the craft that I decided
Awesome.
to perfect. And I don't know, there's something about
Dude, I
photography
love
that
that.
for me it was
Yeah.
just easier for me to do in a way. And then I
Yeah.
lost all of my drawing skills, all of my painting skills, all of that. you know
It'll come back. It can come back if you get into it. But the
yeah,
photography, the photography thing is awesome, especially
yeah,
as a service member, man. That's going to be something that your kids will be able to look at in the future.
yeah.
And if you have an eye for it, man, it's going to be a blessing to them when they grow up and they get to look at all the work you were doing, dude. So definitely encourage you to take a lot of pictures. Take a lot of pictures while you're over
Don't
there,
tell that
dude.
to my wife.
Oh, I know, I know. My dad was always like, "Dude, journal. You got to write these stories down." I'm
Yeah,
like, "I'll remember them," and now I can't remember a lick.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
awful.
Well, I'm
But
trying to
yeah,
do both
dude,
actually, is also
good,
journal, the stuff we've been
good.
through, but it
Yeah,
also helped
certainly.
me through photography to
Yeah,
journal the,
just tell the story through
what,
photo.
yep,
Yeah,
yep,
that's it, man.
yep. And so, yeah, and
That's
that's
fantastic,
that's
dude.
of course helped me on social media to be able to, just
For
share my
sure.
story, right?
Yep.
And so,
Awesome.
and I love when people, comment about, that photo you took was so that, dope or whatever.
Powerful.
But
Yeah,
yeah, but that's what I feel about
dude,
your
they're
artwork. I mean,
awesome.
when I look at your
Oh,
artwork,
thank you,
it
man.
just like It is so good. It is so
Thanks,
detailed.
man.
It's
Thank you.
so, yeah, like the Da
Thanks.
Vinci version of
Oh,
like
stop.
tactical style of
Yeah,
drawing,
thanks,
right?
man. Thank
But it's
you.
not,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
cool. It's a cool medium to paint in, man. There's really not a whole lot of guys painting from our era, like my
yeah,
generation. Even in the war, not a lot of vets painting on a really high tier, and that's kind of where I'm trying to meet the market and just paint something a little bit more masculine, paint something for men,
mhm,
paint stuff that encourages guys to you know be real men. And if it can be impactful or meaningful or tell a story that does that, then that's awesome.
yeah. Can you tell us about the patches that you were inspired to do? These cool
Oh yeah,
patches that
man, the menorah
I
patches, those are
I
sweet,
got a
dude.
hold of these and I
Yeah,
wear them
those
on
are
my.
cool. I'm glad. It's so cool to see you wearing those, by the way. I bragged to like all my, I was showing the pictures yesterday to another artist. I was like, dude, check
Oh
this
yeah,
out. This is the sickest. Look at it. He's wearing my patch. It's so cool.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, so the patches, according to the Jewish midrash,
yeah.
David in the inside of his shield had Psalm 67, which is there's 7 lines in the psalm. You should look it up. It's actually an awesome psalm. I don't have it memorized yet, but I would like to. But he
Yeah.
had the psalm written out in the shape of a menorah on his shield, and apparently before battle or after battle, he would sit and he'd meditate on that or on that chapter. And I thought, man, that's really cool. I've never heard that before, and I thought, is there like a modern equivalent to what that is? And I thought, like, well, why the menorah? Like why that
Yeah.
shape specifically? And I thought, like, as a believer, we're the we're the temple, as
Mhm.
Christians, and and I was like, oh, dude, what if I did something similar? Like, what if I could create a patch that kind of drew on some of those elements? And one of the wonderful things about being an artist is just like talking about the art and kind of talking about the story behind the art, because I think that's almost more impactful than just the art piece itself. It gives it really, good provenance to the piece itself, and makes the patch more impactful, just knowing like what it means. And so I was like, dude, this is something that we need on our kits, just as a reminder of that, divine mission, like that light that once lit the temple. As believers now, we are salt of the earth. We are the light in the darkness, and just as a reminder of that, to rock in those patches. But yeah, I made a YouTube video on it, kind of like explaining the whole thing in
Mhm.
detail. I'd probably encourage somebody. I probably said it a lot better on the video than I did just now with the explanation. But if you're interested in more, you can go check that out. Probably not to shamelessly plug myself or my little YouTube videos.
Well, first of all, it's definitely going to be in the description
Oh, cool,
of
man.
this
Thanks.
YouTube interview for
Sweet.
sure. And I always do that is I try to
Yeah.
make sure that I
Thanks,
get
man.
all the social media
Little
links and whatnot.
details. Sweet.
But
But yeah,
but
speaking
yeah,
of last time you posted a picture, tagged me in it, and like patches are gone. So I got guys in Israel now, like, dude, I'm deploying
awesome,
soon. Can you get more? And I'm like, dude,
yeah,
I'm trying, man. I didn't expect it. It just came out of nowhere, and now they're gone.
good,
And so
good,
I should have some soon, within the next couple weeks, or
okay,
week or two. Sorry.
okay.
So hopefully we can get more out. But yeah, man,
Good deal. That's yeah,
we'll make it
that's what I
happen.
love about social media. It's
Isn't that
that
cool?
for me, it's about sharing either, my life, whatever with people, but
Right.
it's also to be able to promote what I support, what I love,
Right.
you know, and
Totally.
your art, if there's any artists out there of the, warrior community, your art
Mm.
is for me on top of the list of
Thanks,
artists.
man.
There
Thank
are
you.
other guys out there
Yeah, for
and
sure.
that do some great work.
Yep.
But man,
Certainly.
like for me personally, and again, I think I'm a
Thanks,
little
man.
bit of an art snob, you know,
Thanks. That's very nice of
and
you.
yeah, but for sure, like yeah, it's really really
Thanks,
talented,
Ron.
and I think it's a great way to also honor the community, to honor the men that made these sacrifices for our
Right.
freedoms, for all the things that we get to enjoy. in
for
these
sure.
free countries we live in. You in the United States, me here in Israel.
Mm,
These are free countries because there are people that paid the heaviest price for us to
mm,
be free and for us to have our
yeah.
dreams and our ambitions and things that we want to do
Yep.
unprohibited by the bad
Mm,
guys, right?
that's right, man.
And so that is a great way to commemorate these warriors. And just to add another plug to your menorah patch, and I also explained that in the post that I made.
Yeah.
I showed the page in the prayer book, the Jewish prayer book, that
Yeah.
has that, right? Because
Yep.
it has the psalm written
Yes.
out in a menorah shape, but
Yep.
it's words, right? And
Yep.
then and
Exactly.
you're like, man, that doesn't really work to get that into, and that's how
Oh
you
yeah,
ended
it
up
was
with
really
that
hard, so
final
I just went with
design.
the shape. Yeah.
Yeah. But another thing that the menorah alludes to is the temple, like you said. And one of the greatest warriors in Jewish history were the Maccabees. And that's one of my
Yep.
greatest inspirations, besides David and
Hmm.
his
Mighty
mighty
men.
men. You know,
Yep.
and it was the menorah. It symbolized the purity, the rededication, which is also what ended up becoming our celebration of Hanukkah,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
um,
that's right.
that you know and so it was the miracle, besides that the many defeated the few
Oh,
defeated
the
the
few
many,
defeated
that
the many. Yep.
the Greek Empire. We're
Yep.
talking about also the fact that that was the big miracle, but what most people think is the big miracle is the menorah that had one oil jar left that was pure oil, because you have to
The
have a
pure.
special purified
Yes.
oil for the lighting of the menorah, which is a seven branched
Yep.
lampstand. And
Hmm.
so they um, filled the menorah that they had with the one day's worth of oil, and it lasted for eight
And it
days, so they could
lasted for the 8 days. Yep. That's
and they
right.
could repurify and get a new batch of oil to keep it going, because the
Hmm.
lampstands have to be continuously burning and lit in
Right.
God's temple. And
Right.
so, any case, that alludes to so many things, right? And
Yeah.
their motivation obviously is David and the Psalms and the
Right.
warrior
Sure.
spirit.
There's so
And it
much more
gave
to
us
it, though.
there's so much more to it.
Yeah.
And so I just encourage people that when they look at your patch, and like you said, there's always a story behind the art, behind the piece. To me,
Mm.
these patches, that's what motivated me to purchase yours and to proudly wear them, is because it alludes to me to the Jewish warrior spirit throughout history, and and
Absolutely.
and the mighty men that have always stood up for what is right, always stood up for
Certainly.
God and country. And
Hmm.
that's why I wear the patch. and uh,
Love it,
and and
man.
I'm honored to have a piece of your artwork um, on my kit, and
Oh
to
man,
and to
the
take
honor
it
is
into
mine, man.
into
Seriously,
into war, man.
it's a
So
it's a joy. It's cool to see. Thank you, dude.
so any case,
Powerful, man.
is there something that's happening with you, brother, that you wanted to kind of add
Yeah,
here while we wrap
nothing
things
crazy,
up?
man. I'm just in the studio every day painting away, man. If you know, I'm, I take a couple commissions a year that I work on, but for the most part, man, I'm doing my thing and then loving every step of the way. So
Yeah,
taking the food that God places at the table and enjoying it, man.
awesome. So I
Yep.
highly encourage anybody who's listening to the podcast that if you want to support what Justin is doing, you have his artwork, which, if you have an awesome office to showcase warrior
Thanks, man.
art, then this is the place to purchase it and to support what he's doing, to support a veteran. I'm very much
Mm,
about supporting the veterans that have paid
thanks,
the
man.
the heavy price of fighting for our freedoms. And uh, people, you love art, you like art, but there's a difference between buying something from a guy in California or New York City that you
Thanks.
know that was inspired by God knows what, and buying art from a guy that's actually done something with his life and has
Thanks,
fought
man.
for you and fought for you to be able
Thanks,
to
man.
have those freedoms. So that to me is the big difference, right? I can
Thank you,
buy
Dorn.
sneakers from Nike, but if there's a veteran owned sneaker brand, I will buy it from that guy.
Dude,
And
thanks, man. Appreciate it. Buy local.
and- yeah, and so exactly, buy local, buy American, support American industry and artwork, man. And to me, that is so cool.
Thanks,
That is
man.
so cool.
Thanks, Dorn.
And I didn't tell you this before the podcast, but I am definitely going to have a commission painting from you. I don't
Let's
know
do it,
what it
man.
costs,
Let's make it happen.
but I am
We'll make it
willing
work.
to definitely support one of
Thanks,
your
man.
art pieces that I'm going to have in this office, God willing, one day.
Let's do
And
it.
I'm actually thinking of the right photo, the right moment, the right
Moment.
to
Yeah.
capture that
Yeah.
I think
Let's
is
collaborate,
gonna
man.
be a
Let's
good
make it
way,
happen.
yeah,
Cool,
to
man.
commemorate this time that I've had to serve here in Israel,
Mm-hmm.
and to have it done from one of the best guys. I
Sure.
can't think of anyone
Oh,
else
thanks, man.
to have make that piece of amazing artwork, and I look forward
Thanks,
to that
Dorn.
and getting
Appreciate it.
that into your pipeline of the stuff that you're making, brother.
Dude, let's make it happen, man. Well,
That'd be
thank you
so
so
cool.
much for having me, bro. It's been a real honor. It really has. It's been great connecting with you.
Awesome, brother. Well, folks, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Justin has an incredible story. Like I alluded to in the beginning here, if you want to get more in depth of his family life background, everything that he's been through, and whatnot, that will be on the Shawn Ryan show that I'm going to have in the link in the description here in the video that you can click and listen to more and hear more about his life and really really super cool story and has inspired me. And but what really drew me was your artwork and me
Thank you, man.
connecting to that on social media and following you and just being really inspired by your artwork.
Thanks,
And
brother.
yeah, so keep it up, man. And guys, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. May you guys be blessed from the mountains of Jerusalem. On the mountains behind me here, where David, or the valley below me, is where David fought Goliath, and the guy that was inspired to write the psalm that this was inspired to
Mm,
be made into a piece of artwork thousands of years later. How cool is
that's
that?
right, man.
And
It's
to have a
awesome.
future IDF soldier of that long line of
That
Jewish
same
warriors.
line. Yep, that's right. It's so
And
sick.
super cool, super cool.
Awesome.
So guys, have a good one. Thank you for listening. Shalom.